move suspension of the rules to allow for remote participation due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. An executive order issued by Governor J.B. Pritzker. Staff recommends the suspension of the rules regarding in-person attendance requirements for public meetings, allowing for city council members and city staff to participate in this meeting remotely. This is for action, and I think we need a roll call vote, correct, Dave?
Second.
Yes. Is Alderman Ruth Simmons here?
I'm going to text her right now.
She is not.
Okay, Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
I believe Alderman Rainey's audio is still coming online here.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite,
Aye.
All right. Well, so for purposes of that, we have a quorum and we have a unanimous vote, correct? We can move on.
you have
Alderman,
3 votes.
Alderman Sufferton, can we at least, it looks like Alderman Rainey's audio is connecting.
Sure.
don't-
Hey. Why don't we do this? You can move
Alderman
on.
Sufferton, we do have 2 speakers for public comment.
Okay, well, our next item is approval of the minutes of the last meeting. And can we go out of order and do public comment and return for approval of minutes? Would that be all right with everybody?
Makes sense. Yeah, you're the chair.
I just had a point of order, Mr. Chair, and that Alderman Braithwaite raises. I don't know if do you have a quorum without Alderman Rainey able to have her audio?
We have a
Yes.
forum with Alderman Fleming, Alderman Braithwaite, and myself. We have 3 of 5.
Okay.
So I'm happy to go out of sequence and do public comment, or we can wait. I see Ann's little connecting to audio bubbles, and I'm not sure. Alderman Braithwaite, did you get Alderman Ruth Simmons? You said you sent her.
He's waiting to get in.
Okay, all right.
She actually is using the wrong link, so I'm texting her now to use the correct link.
Okay, then why don't we just stand at ease for a moment, and then we can.
And I just wanted to clarify for Alderman Braithwaite's question, you do have a unanimous vote to suspend the rules to proceed using the remote system, even without Alderman Rainey with her audio.
I'm here. I'm trying to be.
Okay.
Alderman Rainey, do you agree with the motion to suspend the rules?
Yes,
to
I
allow
do.
for-
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Okay.
And Alderman Sufferton, just for the public, I think I, for one, have had just issues getting on the internet. I don't really have a real reason why. So I definitely want to be efficient with our time, but my whole day is delayed. It looks like Alderman Rainey's just getting on board, and I know that Alderman Simmons is trying to work her way into the meeting, just for the public or our staff that's waiting.
I keep being asked to sign in. I don't know why.
Yeah, she was on the wrong date. That's what her. So we give her
What am I
a
on?
moment.
She
good.
has the. I just resent the link to Alderman Simmons. If we can maybe, there she is.
There she
Well,
is.
how about
All
doing
right,
it for
Alderman.
me?
You're okay, Alderman Rainey. You're on the right meeting.
Yeah, you're on. Welcome, Alderman
Okay.
Simmons.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was actually just logging into the wrong link.
Well, all right, no worries. So now we have all 5 of us here. We, just to catch you up, we did the motion for the remote participation. We're on approval of the minutes of the January 11th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Alderman.
Second.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Does anybody have any issues they'd like to raise? Or if not, Dave, if you don't mind.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
Aye.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
All right, and so with that, item M1, approval of the minutes of the regular Administration Public Works Committee meeting of January 11th, 2021, passes on a 5-0 vote. That brings us to item 3, which is public comment. You said there are 2 public commenters.
Yes, Mike Vasilko and Tina Payton.
There is a third speaker now, Carlos Hutton.
Oh, okay. All right, well, everybody on that list is an experienced public comment participant, so you know the drill. 3 minutes. We'll go in the order they're presented. Mike Vasilko, you are up.
I'm just trying to log on my video. There I am. Mike Vasilko, 6'4", 2728 Reese. So I submitted my comments early, but I found a few more while I was waiting. The big one, I guess, for me is in the bills list, which is part of A1. So you have this line item, just one line of debt service, various is what it says, from Zion Bank, debt principal payments, $14,840,400.01. But that's it. Doesn't say, there's no attachments, there's no breakdown. We don't know. I mean, my bank, when they send me anything, it's, 4 or 5 pages. That should be attached. I mean, maybe the alderman, the mayor, and other people know what that is, but I don't, and there's nothing in the packet. So that should not, it's incomplete, and that should be removed. And items A2, A3, A4, minor in comparison, of course, but here are single source contract extensions, and you have the opportunity to, at this point, to do competitive bidding again, but you choose not to. The staff chooses not to. And they should be looking to reduce costs at every opportunity like this, like A2, A3, A4, not just arbitrarily extending contracts. And again, while I was waiting, there was, I noticed there is entertainment performance services for Fleetwood Jourdain, Winter Program Theater. I don't even know that's really happening, but you're paying somebody $500 for that. I mean, if it really truly is occurring, that's one thing, but I can't imagine during the COVID that anyone is at a theater. And also you have Crown Community Center music membership dues. I can understand why you might want a music performance license, but that's not something that's necessary right now. That's $1,500, give or take. That should be line itemed out as some kind of a savings. So those are my comments for APW. It just seems, once again, there's, nobody's looking at the detail of some of these things, and whether it's $1,000 or $500 or whatever, or $15 million, there should be more information, or some of these things should be deleted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Next up is Tina Payton. Tina, I see your box. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I would like to talk about agenda item A12, which discussed the vacancy window covering for the downtown Evanston businesses. And I believe that the vacancy window covering should apply to residential buildings, not just commercial storefronts in the downtown Evanston. As you know, I've spoken many times about Jackson and Emerson has a whole street of board up 6 or 7 buildings boarded up all in a row. And I looked at the memo, and there's a line that says business districts are also home to many residents who deserve a high quality of place. So are you saying in the West Evanston 5th Ward or low income areas, we do not deserve a high quality of place? By keeping these buildings boarded up and unattractive, which you're trying to curtail, and in the downtown Evanston, why doesn't it apply to other areas? Once again, this is the only area where we have 6 or 7 board ups in a row. And once again, I will say it looks ghetto, and I find it very offensive that the city is not enforcing any beautification in low income areas. And all you do is give code violations to landlords like myself who are trying to keep up the buildings, but you let other people just have board ups and unattractive properties, which diminishes the value and living of my property and my tenants. So I believe that if there is nothing on the books for enforcement of vacancy and boarded up properties in for residential, that you need to also include residential and not just downtown Evanston storefronts where people have where you consider affluent or can afford a nice place to live. It should not just be in downtown Evanston. It should be all over Evanston. Thank you, and Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Tina. I appreciate your comments. Next up, Carlos Sutton. Carlos, I see you. You're
Right, yeah, let me get unmute here. Okay, is that okay now?
Yes, gotcha.
Okay, yes. Good evening. I just want to follow up with a couple more points with Tina Payton. I'm requesting on A12 that we show some kind of consistency in the city of Evanston between boarded up buildings in commercial areas and boarded up buildings in residential areas. It's a bad sign. Commercially, it shows that a city, especially a downtown area, is in a stressful time. And it's not an incentive for people to come to the downtown area to shop when they see so many buildings closing. There's an equally bad incentive that reflects urban blight when you see 5 or 6 houses on a primary residential street, Emerson and Jackson, all boarded up, that were places what should be available since we have such a large shortage of available housing. So I'm asking for some consistency in your policy. We in the residents of the 5th Ward deserve the same kind of quality of life in our living and in our property standards as you do in other wards in this city. And there should be no difference about the law applying to boarded up buildings and what the landowners ought to do, either to get these buildings functioning or either to place them in a position where they can either be sold or renovated. But please, that area on Jackson and Emerson is a sore site, and it's an embarrassment to us who are residents of the 5th Ward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carlos. I appreciate your comments, as always. So having completed public comment, why don't we move to the bills list, and if it could be moved, I move approval of item A1, which is the City of Evanston payroll and bills list. Staff recommends City Council approval of the City of Evanston payroll for the period of December 21st, 2020 through January 3rd, 2021, in the amount of $2,752,98. The bills list for January 26th, 2021 is a fiscal year 2020 in the amount of $17,348,662.71, and January 26th, 2021 fiscal year 2021 in the amount of $597,952.39.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and
Second.
seconded. Is there any discussion from any members of the committee? If not, I will ask.
I think Alderman Rainey has a.
Oh, sorry.
Alderman Sufferton, I'm sorry. Just want to make Alderman Rainey, did you have a question? You're muted. You're still muted, Alderman Rainey. I
No?
can't,
Okay. Are you,
she's wait, okay.
I think she waved us off, but give some time. I would like to ask, is there any staff who can address my, oh, and do you have a question? You are no longer muted.
Wait. I'm no longer muted. I'm having terrible problems with my internet, which I'm not going to be able to have.
Alderman Rainey, I said at the top of the meeting that I've been having issues as well. Maybe you want to call in from your cell phone or use that. Her screen is frozen.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll do, and this will buy time in case Ann does have a question. Is there anybody who can address Mike DeSilva's question about the breakdown of the large debt service? Hey, Hitesh.
Hey, good evening, Chairman, members of the committee. Yes, definitely I can give the detail of all the, I think 15 or 16 different bond series, and obviously the payment is higher because it includes the principal as well as the interest payment.
Okay. And it's customary for that to be just one line item in our bills list?
No. What I will do is before the next 15 minutes, I will email to all of you the invoice which we received from Zion Bank, which is a paying agent for us.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Hitesh. I appreciate it. Is there anybody else? Ann, you're back. Welcome. Is there anybody else who has a question or comment on the bills list? If not, it's been moved and seconded, and I think we're good to take a vote on approval of the bills list.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey. She's signaling aye. Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Yeah. All right. Let me just check. Nick Cummings, is that sufficient for a vote from Alderman Rainey?
Yeah, she indicated aye.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so on a 5-0 vote, the bills list, item A1 has passed. Now that we've done that, is there any other agenda items on the consent calendar that anyone wishes to remove? I would like to remove items A6 and A12. Is there any?
I would like to remove A2 and A3. I also have a question about A4.
Okay.
Floor, concrete, trying to keep up. I'm sorry, you had A2, A7.
A2, A3, A4, A6, and A12 have been removed.
Thank you.
A10 and
Okay.
A12.
Okay, A10.
A10. Okay. And did someone say A12?
I said A12.
Thank you, Alderman. Damn near all of them. Okay.
Okay, yeah, so that kind of defeats the consent agenda purpose, but why don't we go ahead and move the consent agenda with the exception of items A1, which is passed, A2,
Right.
A3, A4, A6, A10, and A12. Is there a second?
Move approved second.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
No.
All right, Mr. Stoneback?
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
Yeah, she's
Alderman
Alderman
Rainey.
Rainey. Just give us an eye if you're okay with
Take the
that.
signs.
All right.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
All right, so on a 5-0 vote, the consent agenda with the exception of the removed item passes. That brings up item A2. Alderman Fleming, could you move that, please?
Yeah, A2 is the approval of fiscal year 2021 debris hauling contract with G&L Contractors. Staff recommends city manager execute a 1-year contract extension for debris hauling with G&L Contractors in the amount of $80,000. The contract award is part of a bid led by Municipal Partners municipal partnering initiative funding is provided by two separate funds, 40,000 the water fund, 45,000 from the sewer fund. 40 from the water fund, 40 from the sewer fund. This is for action.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Fleming.
Yeah, I pulled this one off, Dave. I know it's part of municipal partner initiative, but it didn't have, and I wanted to know more about the MWEBE component for it. It didn't have it as it usually does in our other bids. And since this is part of a larger initiative, what is the responsibility, I guess maybe from the municipal partnering initiative for MWEBE contractors and bids?
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Dave Stomack, Public Works Agency Director. These bids, as they go out through the municipal partnering initiative, do not include any MWEBE participation. Evanston's probably one of the only communities that has that type of requirement, and so the other municipalities do not want to participate in that.
Okay, so that being said, and I do realize this is a local and that it's Skokie company for A2 and 3. That being said, how many contracts do we go into under this municipal partnering initiative?
Off the top of my head, I can think of about 4 or 5. These two, we also do the pavement marking contract. We do the street patching contract. We do the street rejuvenation contract, and we do the crack sealing contract.
Okay, and in our selection, because I'm not sure how this partnering works, do they at least try to get local vendors, or do they just get whoever based on their own internal scoring process?
The advantage of being in the municipal partnering is just the volume of work that's provided. So you have 5 or 6 municipalities doing a similar type of work, and because of the quantity, able to lock in a contractor theoretically at a cheaper price. And that is something that we have verified, that we have gone out to bid individually for this similar type of work, and the prices that we received through municipal partnership was cheaper than when we bid the works individually.
All right, and even though we're the only municipality who has an MWEBE component, have we ever had the conversation with them about, them looking into something like that, considering that when they're doing their scoring? Or have we just gone with it because it's cheaper and a little bit easier?
So these are bids, so there isn't any score. It's just a low bid that's obtained, so it's not like a request for proposal. And we did talk to them, and they were not interested in making that a requirement. The majority of these contracts that we're bidding out are performed by just one contractor, so there's minimal subcontracting opportunities. So the debris hauling that we're currently on, I believe, right? It's just the work that the contractor is going to do, and they provide a truck and haul the debris from the municipality to a landfill. And so they'd be subcontracting the same work that they're performing, and so they aren't interested in doing that. And that's similar to all the projects that we're bidding through the municipal partnership. It's just that one type of activity, so there isn't 2 different types of work that can be performed that you might subcontract part of that work out to somebody else.
Right, but even in not subcontracting, if we were trying, and I understand this is a group, so they don't want to do it, but if we were trying to be intentional about local or minority-owned businesses, we could do that with them being the sole contractor. They don't have to be the subcontractor per se, if that was something we were trying to prioritize. I realize you're saying that the group doesn't want to, but that is my point in question. And again, I do appreciate that it is a local company and that it's, Skokie, so it's close enough. Maybe they have some Evanston workers, but it just seems to not really highlight what we are committed to as a city in our hiring.
Right. So if we were to go out to bid for this, if it was an Evanston firm and they were within 5% of the low bid, then we would award it to the Evanston firm. But there are, to my knowledge, there are no Evanston firms that do the type of trucking that we're requesting here or providing the granular material. So it's the large dump trucks, the bomber trucks as they're referred to, that provide this service. And I'm unaware of a firm in Evanston that has the capability and manpower to do this type of contract.
And are you unaware of, I'm sorry, one more question on the breakaway. I know are you unaware of a minority or woman-owned company that is just anywhere that does this kind of work, or have we not? You haven't investigated, I'm assuming, because we've just gone with this one as part of the partnership.
Well, I know that there are minority and I believe women business enterprises that probably bid on this job. They're not precluded from bidding as part of the municipal partnership. They just did not provide the lowest bid amount.
Okay, go ahead, Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Alderman Fleming. So, Dave, and Alderman Fleming, I hear the direction that you're going, and I guess I would ask it for a little bit differently to the same point. I would be curious to know that if there is a schedule of bids, whether it's the next quarter over the next year, that we specifically do through this purchasing group, right? So that would be the first question. And and maybe Alderman Simmons might be able to shed some light. There is a business, they do trucking, the last name is Lane. So I'm going to look into that and come back. But my point is, Dave, so if this purchasing group, MPI, precludes us from utilizing local vendors based on your past, I'll say survey versus experience, I would like to know ahead of time or maybe I would like to know, looking at last year, everything that we bid through this purchasing group. Because as I recall, over the last couple of years, not directly from you, but from our past city manager and CFO, this was a barrier to us being able to use local contractors. And I think I've said it, obviously, Alderman Simmons, and I think everybody on the council, just as a part of our own recovery, it makes sense for us to prioritize local businesses. And I can't speak for everyone else, but I'm sure if we need to make a provision in our local code or home rule ability to make those changes, Dave, I think now more than ever, I along with, I'm sure, members of our AP&W would want to pursue that. Does that make sense?
Yes, and again, there's
Director?
nothing that would prohibit any Evanston firm from bidding on this project. It's, I'd have to go check our purchasing requirements, but again, we would bid this. It's a bid, not a request for proposal. And the only way that an Evanston business would get to work is if they were the low bidder or within 5% of the low bid.
Okay.
So, if I guess we could try bidding these without joining the municipal partner initiative next year, but my guess is that our prices will be higher if we bid it individually.
So that's anecdotal. That's anecdotal if we don't have any data to compare it to. And I think what would make sense is to know what you've bid in the past, because these things come up without a real frequency for me. And I didn't pay attention to it last year like I'm going to pay attention, and many other members of the committee this year. So similar to our capital projects that we review on the MWB committee, and I know Alderman Simmons has a question to follow, like there's a schedule that we see ahead of time that we're able to pay attention to. And so my same question will apply to this. Do we have a scheduled number of bids, whether it's this year or last year, that we can review as a committee to see if there are any opportunities for local vendors? I mean, I'm thinking of, I can't remember his name. I think it's GL Lane. He did a ton of work for NSP2 is the only reason that I remember. And I'm sure Alderman Simmons probably has a better working knowledge than I do, but I would like to think that his company may be the one qualified Evanston person that sticks out to me. So rather than beat this up, I'd like to know, Dave, directly, is there a schedule for this year or is there a schedule for last year that we can review to see what type of group purchasing bids are coming up for this upcoming year?
Yes, I will be glad to provide that information to you.
All right.
As well, the rest of, thank you, Director.
Alderman Simmons, do you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think what this highlights more is a opportunity for workforce development and business development. So I don't think that any of the recommendations will create a responsive bidder that we're hopeful for. And Mr. Lane, you're right, did a lot of work, but he's since retired and relocated to Arizona years ago. So if we have a opportunity in which we can support the community in developing a business or building capacity so that they are more responsive, that's something I hope we can work on so we don't have any more missed opportunities for local contracting. And that's something that we can do on the MWEBE committee, as well as reaching out to the business consortiums in town to get a word out to businesses that may be able to perform, but maybe don't have the capacity, and that's why they're not bidding, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay. So we'll work on that in committee.
Yep.
All right, so as it pertains to item A2, it's been moved, seconded, and discussed. Should we take a vote? There's no further discussion. Let's go ahead and do that.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
Aye.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
5-0 vote. Item A2 passes. Item A3, was that one that you pulled, Alderman Fleming, as well?
It was, and it's the same issue, so I'll just read it real quick and we can vote. A3 is approval of fiscal year 2021 granular materials purchase contract with G&L Contractors. Staff recommend council execute authorize city manager to execute a 1-year contract extension for the purchase of granular materials with G&L Contractors and Skokie for the amount of $28,200. It's part of the Municipal Partner Initiative. Funding will be provided by two sources: $14,100 from the Water Fund and $14,100 from the Sewer Fund for action.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item? I will go ahead and take a vote.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
Aye.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
All right, so on a 5-0 vote, item A3 passes the Administrative Public Works Committee. That brings us to item A4. Alderman Simmons, could you take that one?
A4.
Yes, please.
Staff recommends City Council authorize the city manager to execute a 1-year single source contract with Ozinga Ready Mix for the purchase of ready mix concrete in the amount of $45,000. Funding for this purchase will be provided by 3 separate funds as follows: general fund in the amount of $18,500, water funding in the amount of $17,500, and sewer fund in the amount of $9,000. I move approval.
Second.
All right, so moved and seconded. Alderman Fleming.
I have another question, and Dave, I'm not sure if this is for you. I'm on those same lines. So I realize Ozinga is close there in my ward, so they do get a lot of business here, a nice family. But in these single source contracts with them, or any contract, have we discussed with them about public benefits around hiring? They have a ton of drivers and also some, yard staff down there. When Mr. Brown was here, we were able to get a couple of young people hired down there, but it wasn't really like an official city pipeline. So is that something that has been discussed somewhere within the staff? They do get a lot of business here, and when I work with them, they were receptive to that, but it might be worth pushing a little harder for with all the contracts they do get.
I can look into that. And again, that is not something that Public Works necessarily would be the direct person to work on that for.
Alderman Fleming, can I make a suggestion if you haven't already met? I think his name is Paul Ozinga.
I have several times. That's who hired the
Yeah.
gentleman last time Mr. Brown and I spoke with him, but it was just Mr. Brown and I having a conversation. So I would
If you
like,
consider, since he's no longer with the city of Evanston, consider a conversation with economic development, looking at the vendors that he's using from an operational standpoint, and then see where we may have some businesses that can provide services just to enhance that local recycling of dollars.
sure.
Okay, so Alderman Ruth Simmons, and then Alderman
I would
Rainey.
even recommend Alderman Braithwaite. Sharon's done such a great job of working with different contractors and vendors in town, even through the process of Crown and others. Maybe she would be an appropriate staff person to help nurture something like that officially.
Yeah,
No, I think that's an even, yeah, that's a great addition. Yes, that would make sense.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, I was thinking it would be nice perhaps if economic development would invite him to come to our committee meeting and explain to him how important it is for him to be in our city and how could we work together with him. And he probably doesn't have any idea what we do. You know, he's so busy doing bigger things.
And Alderman, I think both you and Alderman Simmons bring up a really good point, and I would be curious of knowing who other skills and services do we use citywide, and maybe we expand that conversation to our top 5 vendors who are in the same business category. And that can be a discussion item that our staff brings just to do some brainstorming around that. So this is a great conversation to have.
I think that would be great. He was very receptive when I worked with him. He actually financed a project over at Shoot to be a good community neighbor and hired staff. But again, that was something Mr. Brown was working on, and he's not here. And it seems like a missed opportunity for such a large employer for us not to be asking to be, a better partner. He didn't even know we had like a youth job fair, so he was participating in that as well before the pandemic. All right, so I will bring this up with Sharon, and I guess you all's committee can do your piece as well.
Well,
Consider it.
we should coordinate. Let's not have everybody talking to him. Let's sort of, direct this.
Yeah.
All right, so sounds like that would be a referral to economic development or separate from what we're going to do here. So after this discussion, are we good to take a vote on item A4?
Yes.
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 Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
Aye.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
All right, 5-0 vote. Item A4 passes. Next, is item A6. I move item A6, a 2-year security contract extension with Phoenix Security. Staff recommends City Council authorize the city manager the third addendum and 2-year extension of the service agreement with Phoenix Security for security services at the Morton Civic Center and the city-owned parking garages. The addendum provides a 2-year extension at a price not to exceed $300,000 per year. Expenses will vary depending on the continuance of closures, reopenings related to COVID-19. Civilian security officers will be charged at a rate of $25.50 an hour, and retired police officers at a rate of $29.50 an hour for 2021, with an increase of $1.75 per hour for 2022. Funding will be from the city manager's office services agreements fund, with a fiscal year 21 budget of $106,000 and a parking fund with fiscal year budgets of $200,000, $700,000, and $300,000 respectively. This is for action.
Second.
And I'm the one who pulled this one. Is this a pretty big expansion of our agreement with Phoenix? And what are we expecting them to do at the parking garages overnight?
Good evening.
Welcome back, Kimberly. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Good evening, all. Kimberly Richardson. To the questions that you asked, Chair Sufferton. As you may not or may recall, we had previously 3 garages that we had under SP plus security as part of our contract with them. As COVID hit, as stated in the memo, we ended our contract with SP Plus due to the fact that COVID hit, and secondly, to save the city over $1 million in savings due to the lost revenue that we experienced. As to the expansion to Sherman, this is due to the fact that with the colder months, we are seeing issues with individuals utilizing the garage to take shelter, but also we end up having some issues within the garages as well. That became a security matter. And for that, we went to Phoenix to ask if they would be willing to, for a short period of time, expand their contract to include the garage. And they were willing to do so at the rate as presented in this agreement. So far, we've had, with their additional support, that area has been less issues occurring security-wise. And so having that presence there has been very helpful. We look to hopefully just keep it to the garage, but we can expand to the others, and this contract will allow for that. Our current agreement with them was only for Sherman. It did not expand beyond Sherman. And so we wanted to make sure that if need be, that would be an option, including the city as well, the civic center, as well as the garages. We're still having a net savings of our security services that we had previously with SP Plus by $300,000. And so we know that we can, working with Phoenix, who have been very good at trying to ensure that they are hiring Evanston residents in our garages to also ensure that whatever we need, they have been very good at responding quickly to our request. And we find working with them to have been a very much added bonus to their services that we weren't getting with our previous contractor. And so we have the service. We will continue to monitor the garages, and if we need to scale up or scale down, we will be able to modify. And Phoenix has been very good about ensuring that they will not charge us differently if we do reduce our costs. If we decide to reduce our hours, they will continue to charge us at the current rate that they're quoting us. And so there's no minimum or maximum. So that's very helpful to allow us to scale back if we need to, or scale up if we need to as well.
Okay. Are we working with anyone to provide services to the homeless in the garage, or are we just counting on Phoenix to?
So that's a good question. And my understanding is that we have this homelessness task force that has been led by our staff to try to help work with Connections for the Homeless and other agencies in the city to help to provide some additional support. We recognize this issue is not going to be resolved just with security, that we do need a holistic approach to it. And so we are working actively to try to alleviate some of those issues, but we also realize it's not going to be something that's going to be easily resolved overnight.
Okay, and so can you help me understand, if a Phoenix security officer encounters someone who's, I guess there would be a trespass, do they engage? Do they call the police? Is there any sort of alternative service? I mean, walk me through what would happen if a Phoenix security officer in the garage came across a homeless person who, as a parent was trying to take shelter for the night. How would that process work?
So they are trained to engage the individual to ask if they can please leave the area. Most times, in my understanding so far, we have had very low incident of individuals leaving the area. And what we are finding out is that once individuals find out that the area is being monitored, they are not coming back into those spaces. What was happening is that they knew the areas were not being monitored, and of course they're going to find these areas for to take shelter within. And so what we have asked, and they have been very good at, is if there's something where they can de-escalate, they de-escalate the situation and the individual is able to leave and relocate. That will be happening. If there needs to be some additional support, they do have the ability to contact our police department with a radio that they have in their vehicle and on their person. And so if necessary, if need to be, they do have that capacity, and we want them to, if there is a need for it, for their safety as well, for the safety of that individual.
So, but we don't have any resources. I mean, basically, it's a matter of getting somebody to leave the garage. We don't connect them with any services. We don't have an overnight shelter to offer them.
No, we don't, but that's something we can look into more to make sure we can have that resources available to the security officers so they have that.
Okay, and are these armed security officers in the garage, or would these be unarmed security officers?
I can speak to you about that offline, but we do have both civilian and we do have those who are concealed carry, officers who are both at our civic center as well as in our garages.
And then we have private security at the garages, civic center. Are there any other city facilities that have private?
Yes. So we have security support at our hearings, administrative hearings, in lieu of us having our police officers, which at a per hour rate was more expensive because it would be a specialty detail. We now have our security who are assisting at the Gibbs Morrison location for our hearings. And if we need to utilize them at other locations, they have made themselves available if necessary, but we don't see a need for that at this time.
Okay. All right. I'd really like, and I know this is a larger issue, but I'd really like to see a coordinated effort. I don't think, I understand there's a trespass issue, there's a security issue, there's a protection of property issue, but I think, when you have homeless people in a parking garage, they're not there because they want to be. And I'd like to see a better coordination with the task force. I don't know, was the task force consulted on this decision?
No.
Okay, is that something that maybe we should have some discussion before we go forward with this? Is this time sensitive and needs to be done right now, or can we at least put together a meeting where we can figure out a way to the best of our ability, address the root causes of people being in the garage overnight?
I think we can do both, sir. It is time sensitive to move this contract forward. However, we can still work with both our staff and with security to make sure that we have some additional support to give them to help in regards to communication to those individuals.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Alderman Suffolk, I'm trying to follow the line of questioning, and I'm asking myself, what is is there a greater concern? From my perspective, given everything that we're seeing on the national scene, I don't see any, if I was to break this up, I don't see any issue with what they're doing at the Civic Center. In fact, I think that it's probably more important than ever, just given the most recent events, that we have security there. And if I understand this memo, we've always had, and I see Mr. Rivera, you turned on your camera, we've always had some form of security in the parking garages, and I would expect that we would continue to do that, sir. And did I misread that? How much are we saving by switching to Phoenix? And I'm going to give you credit for that in advance. So go ahead and maybe you can respond to that question, sir.
Good evening, members of the committee. Mike Rivera, Parking Services, Parking Manager. We have always had security in all three of the parking garages. Security is not new. This is something that we've carried. We've carried security contracts for the better of 15 years that I'm aware of. A year ago to date, we were providing security at the 3 garages through the contract that is administered through SP Plus. SP Plus at that time was contracting with Monterey Security Services. We were paying guards $28 per hour, and we didn't have any say in the matter unless we went through SP Plus. And every garage had a guard 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So each site had a guard in excess of 150 hours a week at $28 an hour. And it was costing us approximately $650,000 a year to the contract. In addition to custodial services that they were also hiring individuals for custodial services. So when COVID hit and we were looking for ways to save budget for the city of Evanston, we looked at those contracts and we went back to SB Plus and renegotiated them and cut them. Our initial contract 12 months ago was $1,443,000 with SB Plus. We renegotiated that to $418,000 a year. And we decided to, well, last year, the initial savings last year, since we did the renegotiations in about April, the initial savings last year was just over $670,000 last year. If we keep things status quo this year, we would be on course to save additionally at least $150,000 on top of that. But some of the services that we did make up was by activating some of the custodians that we have, some of our parks and recs custodians that we utilize, part-time employees that we utilize in other facilities. We use them to make up hours in the parking garages to do custodial services, so we didn't have to take on full staff through SB Plus. And then for a while, while we were under COVID, we also asked parking enforcement officers to patrol the garage by doing drive-bys and doing just security walks through the hallways. Now that we have had an increase in homelessness, we have now formed a homeless task force with the law department, police, Connections for the Homeless, our outreach team. Our outreach team has all been involved in mitigating the issues there at the garage. And, you know, from where we were 90 days ago to now, you know, we've probably, the issues have subsided at least by 90%. Our guards are trained to engage individuals. They don't just shoo them away. You know, they ask if they do well-being checks, they ask if they're okay. They ask if they're safe. They have flyers that they give individuals for services. And individuals that are aggressive, then at that point they need to call police, and the police will ask the individuals to leave the facility. But I would say 9 times out of 10, we are not arresting people. We are trying to perform outreach, and we're trying to steer people in a different direction than just hanging out in the facility all day long.
Mike,
No, I appreciate you stepping in to address the issues. Alderman Sufferton, I'm sorry.
no, yes, I jump on the other. So the scope of work here is from 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. Who's doing security 4 a.m. to 4 p.m.?
From 4 a.m. to 4 p.m., nobody's doing security. We strategically selected those hours, again, as a way to mitigate the budget by just fully activating guards 24 hours a day. Throughout those hours, we have a lot of people coming and going to work. We have city staff that start at 5 a.m. in the facilities. And we have people just routinely driving through there. And in the event that there's things going on, people are going to be prone to call 911 on their own without having somebody there to do that for them. So that's the reasons why we just forewent that shift.
Gotcha. My concern, or all the things you
Questions. One, Mr. Rivera, do the tenants who live in the Sherman building, Ms. Sherman Plaza, I can't remember,
Sure.
or Church Street building that use the parking garage, do they contribute to the maintenance and upkeep of the parking garage, like via HOA or anything like that?
We have, through our reciprocal easement agreement that governs the entire facility, there's percentages that are allocated for like generator repair. There's percentages allocated for engineering, spec engineering reporting, and things like that. So everybody has a shared expense on certain items. Security is not one of them, because security is in the parking garage structure itself, and it does not cover the vestibules that lead into the condo 807 Davis condo building.
Okay, and do those, you mentioned generator and such, but in terms of, just maintenance and snow removal and all those kind of things, do they share any of those payments, or that's just what we do because it's our parking garage?
That's what we do because it's our parking garage. Now they do share, like I said, for energy costs or our utility costs, they pay 19% of the energy bill because that covers their segmented parking. They pay certain percentages for engineering spec reports that we conduct every 3 to 5 years. They also pay into the parking access revenue control system maintenance when that needs to be maintained and replaced. Also, any capital improvement projects that need to get undertaken in the facility, they also pay percentages into that as well.
Okay, and then Ms. Richardson, for the longevity of the contract, and I know you mentioned if we have to change it, that the vendor is okay with that, but is the thought that in terms of the Civic Center, that when we, are past COVID or back at work in whatever form that looks like in that building, those gentlemen will go back to what they were doing pre-COVID, which is just like sitting at that, I think, front desk and kind of walking the hallways, once we don't have to do the temperature checks and all that stuff anymore?
Yes, they will go back to their regular rotation. And then that would also mean that we will go back to having 2 security officers in the building per day versus 1.
And that hours, they were there like 6 to whenever the evening shift ended.
Correct. They had an after evening shift, so we had an overlap of 1 hour with both security officers, and then in the evening there would be an officer until the building closed around 9.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then in terms of the homeless piece that Alderman Sufferton is talking about, I think at one point, Deputy or Assistant Manager, I'm not sure your title now, Assistant Manager Richardson, if at some point, I know that last meeting went very long, but if at some point we could maybe have an update at Human Services or somewhere from the homeless task force, I think that would be helpful. We've all probably gotten different reports from different folks in the community around homelessness and what's happening. So I think I would like to have a report at some point, just an update from someone here at the city in terms of what the task force is doing and what we're seeing and what a plan is and so on and so forth.
Definitely, we'll have that for you.
All right, is there any further discussion? If not, I think we're good to go for a vote here on item A6.
Alderman Ruth Simmons, I'm sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
No.
Alderman Rainey,
Aye.
Alderman Fleming,
Hi.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
A 4-1 vote on item A6 is passed. The next item that was pulled was item A10.
A10?
Can you take item A10, please? I think that was yours, Robin, right?
Yes. Staff recommends City Council adoption of Resolution 11R21 to approve the representative testing of samples for lead and copper in all 9 wards. I move approval.
Second.
Thank you. I'm sorry, did you call me? Okay. I just wanted to pull this one off and really just highlight the great work of our community and thank the community for paying such close attention and bringing to our attention ways that we can improve our services. And I want to call out Miss Regina Santana, 2nd Ward resident, and Miss Janet Alexander Davis, and everyone at the Environmental Justice team, as well as Kaylin Luciano and Hannah from the Daily Northwestern, that did a pretty robust report on this matter, which has led to my request for resolution so that we move forward testing all 9 wards for our water quality. Before this resolution, Director Stoneback had already put together an internal plan that has been implemented, and all 9 wards are being tested. This way, it's really institutionalized, and we can hold all leadership accountable. So I'm asking support for this, and I'm also saying thank you to the residents and the students at the Daily that helped advance this initiative.
All right, any further discussion? If not, why don't we go ahead and take a vote?
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
Aye.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
All right, and a 5-0
There's
vote.
one more thing I want to add. Our water is safe. So that was the great outcome. I should add that before that becomes a story. Our water is safe. I drink it every day. It tastes delicious and it nourishes my family. I hope it is nourishing your family as well. And you're not spending money on bottled water, because we have the most incredible supply of natural water right here in Evanston, Illinois. Sorry, Tom.
Well, always a good message for people to hear. All right,
Making some.
item B12, which is ordinance 8021, amending chapter 10, section 4, chapter 13 to add storefront maintenance and window covering during vacancy or renovation. Staff recommends city council adoption of ordinance 8021, amending chapter 10, section 4, chapter 13 to add storefront maintenance and window covering during vacancy or renovation. This is for introduction. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Great, and I see Mr. Zalmazak is here. Paul, if you wouldn't mind, I had a question about the differences that were brought up during public comment between residential areas and commercial areas. If you could talk a little bit about this particular proposed ordinance and what it does and what it's intended to do as it relates to commercial areas throughout the city. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman Sufferton. Good evening, City Council. I'm Paul Zalmazak. I serve as the Economic Development Manager for the City of Evanston. I wanted to point out that this particular update to the signage code is really designed to maintain the appearance of commercial district or merchant district storefronts. Specifically addresses that in the storefront aspect of the building code. And the idea is if we have long-term vacancies or if a space is under construction for 6 or 9 months, that it's just not papered over with fading, bleached brown paper and duct tape. I think it's really important for this year, especially as we know that there are some vacancies. I pointed out during my original presentation to the Economic Development Committee, there's a beautiful example of this. There are multiple beautiful examples. One that comes to mind from an independent business on Howard Street, Palm House. They had their storefront windows covered while they were under construction with a beautiful vinyl sign. And we see this in downtown Evanston at Church Street Plaza, where there are some vacancies. Northwestern Medicine has their temporary vinyl up at the former Barnes and Noble. So there are good examples. Some of them can be really expensive. We're not saying you must provide the highest beautiful example that you can find. We're saying that it just can't be the things we said it can't be in the code. And Panera Bread is an example of what we cannot have. I'm going to call that out because it's on a high profile corner. It just looks really bad. So we'll work with that landlord if this ordinance is approved tonight. I think what you're also asking is, I did hear during public comment that I heard a couple of things that I think need to I guess kind of be reframed. One, this is not just a downtown ordinance. This is citywide. Any merchant district that has storefronts, this would apply to. I think that's pretty clear in the staff report and in the code. And then secondly, the code addresses the things that were brought up in terms of the vacant building ordinance with boarded up windows in residential areas. I'm not going to speak to that because I'm not the expert, and it's but it's chapter 16, section 4-16-13 of the city code that addresses boarding of buildings. Specifically, there's discussion about how a building cannot remain boarded for longer than 6 months. So I would just encourage that information to be out there. And by the way, going back to the storefronts, it doesn't have to be a vinyl covering. We could also do a low cost or no cost art display. There are many examples of that in downtown. As an example, again, we're just in the Varsity Theater building, there's a rug shop that's storing some of their rugs and they have them displayed in the window. Anyway, I just want to stress that it's about beautification, short-term vacancies. Let's just make the place look nicer while we're going through this. Any other questions?
Alderman Rashads.
Well, not exactly a question. I'm pretty clear on the need for this ordinance and the difference that this applies to all merchant districts, but it does take me back to the Jackson Wesley board up, where an understanding that it's residential, it's not commercial, but all the same arguments of perception and value and morale, I mean, all the more are matters of concern in a neighborhood. And not just perception and morale, but actual value as well. If you ride past an entire city block that is boarded. When it initially was boarded, I was told that they could not be actively marketed and be boarded. They took them off market and left them off market for a while, boarded them up, were compliant, and now they're back on market and boarded. And we have to figure out a way to hold residential property owners as accountable as we are looking to advance measures to hold commercial property owners definitely, especially since it's in the neighborhood. So I don't know where this fits in, or even if it fits in, and maybe I need to make a referral for a different ordinance altogether. But I want to call that out. I want to let the residents know that you are heard. I have been responding to this and looking at ways that we can address what is, I don't want to call it an eyesore, but it certainly is discouraging when you're thinking about, property value and how vibrant a neighborhood is if there is a city block and a half that is boarded up. So if not you, Paul, if Director Leonard could be preparing something that we could look at to address what we can do about the residential areas that are boarded up.
Right. Thank you, Alderman Simmons. I think the matter would, and I would also yield to my colleague, Director Stoneback. I believe that this would a formal referral to the Community Development Department, because I believe that that department is managing building inspection services, and I think that's under their purview, but I honestly don't know the answer to that. So we can take it back.
It is. And so I'll come up with the language for a referral at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion? If not, I think we're good to.
Alderman, thank you, Alderman Sufferton. Director, there were a couple of things that came out of our last meeting that I would like to make a referral to put on our calendar. One is an understanding from whether it's our purchasing department or city manager, just how, hold on one second, I wrote this down, how bids are scored. So who's responsible for doing it? What's the methodology for it, for us to better understand that? That was number one. And then the second thing, and this can be at a separate meeting depending on how much time the purchasing department takes to put that together, is a better understanding of MPI, Dave. I had asked for a schedule either last year or what this year looks like. Just to Alderman Simmons' point, I would be curious to see where we can find some synergy with some of our local businesses. And then the last thing, and this is something, Dave, a conversation that we've had at our MWB committee meeting regarding our 20K and underspend. I know that Hitesh is preparing a memo, and I think for the members of our AP&W, we've we've talked throughout the year, and I'm sure it's going to be a big focus this year as we recover from the pandemic. How do we have a greater impact on our local spend? And if that requires looking at policies to make those changes, I think the information that we'll glean from our 20K and underspend will help drive that conversation. And that's something that we have been discussing at our MWE committee, which this could come to AP&W, or I think it also would be a great conversation to segue into economic development. So Dave, if you have any questions with any of those referrals, we can discuss offline. And Alderman Sufferton, if you have any other questions, I can always circle back with you as well.
Yeah, we just need to vote on item A12, storefront maintenance and window covering during vacancy year.
Oh, I thought we were wrapping up the meeting.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Why don't we do that? And then, yeah, no, you got it. You're good.
My apologies. Okay.
No all right, I think we're good to vote, Mr. Shelby.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
Aye.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
All right, so that passes on a 5-0 vote, and that brings us to items for discussion. Alderman Rainey, this is yours, item D1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is D1, a Good Neighbor Fund allocation and fire services provided to Northwestern University. Our staff is submitting a report on the Good Neighbor Fund allocation and fire services provided to Northwestern University for discussion at the Administration and Public Works Committee. I move that we discuss this.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. I believe interim chief Paul Collins is available too. Is there anybody who wants to kick it off? Alderman Reed, this was your initiative.
I'd just like to make one comment. We are servicing Northwestern with fire and rescue services, which we must. I would absolutely insist that we do that. However, since they pay no property taxes, and since the most of the rest of us do, we also receive fire and rescue services. Chief Brian Scott, prior to his retirement, sent us a memo explaining that any ambulance sent to Northwestern property, whether it would be for a Northwestern student, faculty, visitor, or just somebody passing through, is charged for that service, the same as everybody else is charged. However, fire and rescue services are not charged to the caller or to Northwestern. So that means that the taxpayers in Evanston are picking up the bill for all the fire and rescue services provided to Northwestern. And Chief Scott showed us that those services, as of this past October, which is when he provided the memo, or it was through October that the information was provided, totaled over $600,000, and it came to something like of 2,000, I believe it was $700 per call. There is no person in this city, I believe, who can rationalize that our taxpayers should be providing that service to Northwestern. We have a way of charging them fees for their services. They pay for their water. I don't think that's a wonderful thing that they do, paying for their water. I think that's a reasonable thing that they do. I think it is time that they get reasonable with their fire service. And I have not talked to one human being in the city of Evanston, and believe me, I've talked to lots of people about this, and not one person thinks that this should not happen. And there's very few people who think that they aren't paying for fire service. So
I feel very strongly, and I know that, you know, this causes all sorts of diplomatic issues, and I'm sorry. I really, really care about Northwestern, but I really, really care about my city, and they are perfectly capable, far more than our taxpayers. And look at what we did at our last budget meeting. We argued with each other about a tax increase, a $600,000 contribution or payment for services from Northwestern would have really helped with that. So I'm sticking to it. I think this town, this council, or the next council, I don't care when this happens, but we have a principled obligation to make this happen. And Northwestern has a principal obligation to pay for this service. Thank you. I have nothing else to say.
All right. Anybody else or interim Chief Polyp, do you have anything to add? I think the memo is pretty self-explanatory, and I think the direction to staff to continue to try and capture payment for these services provided is pretty clear. Unless anybody else has a comment, I think we can. Yes, Alderman Fleming.
I do have a comment. So I've realized a couple years ago, I know we did some kind of either new ordinance or change to ordinance where we were charging residents who were going to bill their insurance for an ambulance call. And then there was a conversation around if they don't have insurance, you know, we wouldn't send them the collectors and so on and so forth. So are we billing Northwestern students or Northwestern for those ambulance calls?
Yes, good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Paul Polyp, interim fire chief. Yes, when we are toned out and we go to Northwestern University for any type of ambulance call, they are billed, their insurance is billed, and then if they are a resident of Evanston, living in Evanston, whatever their insurance pays for, the remainder is then taken care of and not sent to collections. That's correct. If they're not a resident, then they get a remaining bill.
And is that, I'm assuming that's not how is that factored into the cost on the memo? So when we say we provided $700,000 worth of services.
Right out.
So based on the amount of calls we go to Northwestern, we have a certain amount, like every year, we track the amount of calls we go to through our CAD, and we break that down to EMS and fire. So the EMS calls are then charged through our billing company, Andre's Billing, and then they're sent a bill. And then from that point, their insurance covers whatever it covers, and the remaining is then either rebilled if they're a non-resident, or it's wiped clean. And then the other set of calls would be for fire calls, like automatic fire alarms or water breaks or CO investigations, anything like that. And those calls are the ones that Chief Scott and Alderman Rainey in the memo are referring to.
Okay. And so for those fire calls, so I have a smoke detector, and I think if my detector goes off and if I don't register it, it's a fee. And if my smoke detector goes off a faulty thing or some other kind of fee, are those same fees applied to Northwestern, and are they charged, are they paying those fees as well?
Yeah, so they have to register their alarms, just like they have to register whatever type of detection system they have through our collector's office and through our alarm register. So yes, they are held accountable to that. And then those alarms are monitored. So if they go off, they're either linked directly to dispatch or a third party, which then would call our dispatch, and then we would get toned out to respond to those addresses.
Okay, then my last point is for that alarm registration. So as a resident, at home, I pay whatever my fee is, and I never looked, but so is a Northwestern dorm that's much larger than my house paying that same? Is it just a flat fee no matter how big your place is for those alarm monitoring fees?
Alderman Fleming, I would have to get back to you on the exact cost and how they bill it if it's per unit or if it's per billing or unit. I would have to work with Mario Trinston on that to get the exact cost of that. That's
Okay.
the Cry Wolf program.
That's okay. Okay, so because I do agree with Alderman Rainey in that I know that they will say, you know, over the years they've done this good neighbor fee and they've, you know, paid for this and that and the third, but this isn't really like a good neighbor situation. This isn't like a charity, right? This is an expectation that I think, you know, they all have at Northwestern, that as being a resident or being here in Evanston, we would cover, you know, they would have access to our fire. So I would like us to be, I don't want to say more aggressive, but for lack of a better word, more aggressive about this, because I don't think they should be able, and particularly this year, they're changing their good neighbor, you know, payment. And this doesn't fall under racial equity, which is their, you know, what they're paying for this year. This is a service that we provide to them, you know, as being in Evanston, as we should, but they should also, I would hope, want to cover the cost just in a yearly fee or what, you know, fee for service, yearly fee, and not make this be part of the good neighbor negotiations as if it's, you know, something they're doing out the kindness of their heart versus receiving a service for paying that, you know, for being here. So I would like to direct Erica. I think there were a couple of recommendations at the end of the memo, none of which, you know, in my opinion, were very concrete. It seemed like we would continue along what we have been doing, which is trying to have these good faith, you know, discussions with them about that. But that really gives them all of the power to be able to say yes or no if they want to contribute more. So hopefully there's a way we can think about being a little more aggressive in this.
All right, thank you. Alderman Rainey.
I'm not concerned about their alarms. They pay for those permits, etc. I am concerned only at this point about their service, the service we deliver to them with trucks, with ladders, with those kinds of vehicles when we go to the school or on Northwestern property with people and equipment at a call where we're summoned to go there, just like we're summoned to go to any one of our homes and prepared to either fight a fire or go to a false alarm, whatever we're being to do, there is a fee for that. There is a cost for that. And the citizens of Evanston are currently paying for that. We must stop. I don't want a lump sum because, hey, maybe some years that lump sum is going to be too much. Some years it's going to be too little. I want an exact fee for the service. Whatever it costs us to go there, that's what we should charge them. And that's what they should pay. I don't want any charity. I don't want them paying any less. I don't want them paying any more. Just the fee for service. And it's got to be a business, and that's what they've got to pay. And I, you know, that they are a good neighbor. I agree. They are a good neighbor up to a certain extent, but all of us are good neighbors. We give to charities, and if you combine what we do, I'm sure, and the citizens of Evanston are good neighbors. I'm sure if you combine what we do as a community, it equals or far surpasses their contribution. I would suspect, as an institution. I'm not saying that all of their students and faculty, et cetera, don't do as well as we do in terms of giving, but they cannot continue to stand on the good neighbor policy. And if they want to kick in a fire truck every now and then, I think that's great. But they need to pay for the service, and the city needs to charge them for the service. Thank you.
You're here. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, we are going to move on to items for communication. Alderman Braithwaite, you got yours in. Alderman Bruce Simmons, is that a hand?
Excuse me.
God bless you.
Thank you. It wasn't, but I'll make a referral now to come back to economic development. So if Director Knighton can look at what options we have to better manage residential board ups, extended periods of time, bring that back to economic development for discussion.
All right. Is there anything else from any member of the committee? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
moved. Second.
Do we need a roll call on that, Mr. Stolbeck, or can we just go ahead and say that planning development starts in 5 minutes?
You're
We need
muted,
a roll
Dave.
call out.
Dave, you're pitching a perfect game, but now you're muted.
Alderman Rue Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
Aye.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Planning development will start at, let's say, 6 o'clock. Thank you, everybody.